When morning came, a peaceful atmosphere then returned to Sylvania. Professor Plubain then reported last night's incident to Principal Abel. The investigation into the death of Ed Roth Taylor is nearing its conclusion. We reviewed the scene using flame scrying magic. Although unable to recreate the scene perfectly, the retainers stabbed the victim, Ed Roth Taylor, and it was confirmed that he fell over the cliff. The retainers of the Roth Taylor family, believed to be the culprits, have been detained in a facility under the academy. The punishment should be transferred to the imperial family, but we need to confirm and report the facts first. Hearing the report, Principal Abel felt that Ed Roth Taylor's death was almost confirmed. He then told Professor Plubain to prepare the details of the report to be sent to the imperial family. Professor Plubain understood. He would arrange it. While looking at the reenactment of Ed's death displayed on the pearl in his hand, Principal Abel continued, "We also have our own tasks to deal with. The cascading effects caused by the death of a student really exceeded our expectations. Lucy, who was devastated by Ed Roth Taylor's death, went on a violent rampage, causing the students to be evacuated in the middle of the night." While looking at the file containing Ed Roth Taylor's profile, Principal Abel believes that he must have had a profound influence on many people. He is also somewhat relieved at this time. In the end, Lucy was subdued by the second-year top-ranked student of the combat faculty, Clebius Nortondale, and her custody was secured while she was sitting quietly in the rose garden. The situation was resolved smoothly. He just knew there was a student with such high potential. He was very impressive. He then ordered the academy officials in front of him to prepare an award for Clebius on behalf of the academy. As for Lucy, convene a disciplinary committee to conclude the matter. After a while passed, they then brought Lucy to the courtroom. The person in front of her at the moment is the vice principal of Sylvania Academy. Rachel, Elvira and Clebius are also present at the hearing. There are petitions from the injured students, Clebius and Elvira. Some of the damages that occurred in last night's incident include the third-floor dormitory wall near Tanya's room, the outer wall of the corridor opposite, the marble floor of the rose garden, and the gazebo. Although it cannot be considered trivial, but the damage is much smaller when compared to the Ophilus Hall occupation incident. While looking at Lucy, Vice Principal Rachel helplessly thought, if only there is one more thing that complements, this can be solved with a light punishment, namely self-introspection. But, looking at Lucy's sleepy face, she felt that it was difficult. Not only the academy, but even the imperial family recognized that the Sylvania Academy was the best educational institution in this era. The reputation comes from the fact that they have successfully produced the legendary genius mage. Since the academy itself has promoted this fact, then expulsion from the academy is not an option. Ideally, they don't want to leave a record of severe punishment, but what makes her dizzy is, how can they give a light punishment if she doesn't even introspect herself? Looking at Lucy, who yawned boredly, she was annoyed. She felt that she didn't have the dignity of being the academy's best student. After calming down for a moment, the Vice Principal Rachel then read out the penalty decision: the revocation of this semester's scholarship, 10 days of suspension, withdrawal of access to welfare facilities for 70 days, and lowering of the practical evaluation score by 2 levels. In addition, withdrawal of the right to live in Ophilus Hall. She then handed a paper to Lucy and told her to sign there if she agreed to the penalty. Hearing that, Lucy didn't even defend herself. She boredly said yes. Although this penalty seemed severe, but in fact it was the opposite. Losing the scholarship meant little to Lucy. The Glock Scholarship Foundation had already paid her tuition fees in full. Besides, even if her grades were lowered, her grades were still far superior to Zix, who was ranked second in class. As for the welfare facilities, it was something she had never used. Basically, this penalty had no impact on her. But Lucy was then surprised when she heard someone suddenly interrupt. That person was Maya. Maya then introduced herself and said that she was present as a witness as well as the manager of Ophilus Hall. With all due respect, she begged Vice Principal Rachel to reconsider regarding Lucy's discipline. She did not believe that these penalties could lead to genuine remorse, so she felt that this penalty needed to be revised. Hearing that, Vice Principal Rachel then reread the penalty decision filed in her hand. Seeing that, Lucy immediately felt panic. She then said that she would sign it right now, but, before Lucy could reach the penalty decision file in the hands of Vice Principal Rachel, someone suddenly held her body from behind. It was of course Maya. Maya explained, removing Lucy from Ophilus Hall was not a punishment but a reward for her. Therefore, she advised the vice principal to limit her access rights to leave the dormitory as much as possible. House arrest would be a more appropriate punishment for her. Lucy's face paled upon hearing that. She then frantically asked the vice principal to give her the paper. Maya continued, "My team in Ophelis Hall will be watching her for 24 hours very closely." The maids of Ophelis Hall seemed to be on fire when they heard that. Lucy then struggling and told her to let her go. Her panic had peaked at this time. Hearing her proposal, Vice Principal Rachel thought for a moment. She then agreed to her proposal. Lucy's sentence would change to 30 days of house arrest. Vice Principal Rachel was rather grateful at this time. Grateful that no severe punishment was recorded. Maya then thanked her for agreeing to her proposal. Lucy felt like crying at this time. She then frantically tried to stop it. She apologized and said that she regretted her actions. She begged, anything, as long as it wasn't that, but her request would certainly be ignored. Lucy's body then stiffened when Maya suddenly called her, with a sharp gaze directed at her. Maya said that they would make sure that she could not get out at all. They would carry out a strict and thorough approach. Lucy could only swallow her saliva hearing that. After Lucy's punishment was successfully decided, Maya and the maids then walked back to the Ophelis Hall while carrying Lucy. Vice Principal Rachel did not know what to say when she saw that. When the news of Lucy's punishment reached Ed, although the punishment seemed light, but he knew that it was an unbearable punishment for Lucy. While pouring the soup she had made into a bowl, Janica agreed with him, also. Thanks to Elvira and Clebius who represented him to speak at the disciplinary committee, the situation could be handled well. Janica then smiled at him and handed the soup to him. It was beef stew. She often made it at home. She said that this was one of her specialties. Ed then clapped his hands in amazement at the cooking. Janica looked proud to see that. She insisted on doing everything: washing, spirit class, academy class, even cooking. It was moments like this that made him think that this was really genuine kindness. Putting that aside, Ed then went back to thinking about this year's Student Council President election. In this Student Council President election, the three variables that worried him the most were, first, Princess Phenia, who seemed to have lost her motivation in becoming Student Council President; second, Tanya Roth-Taylor, who was supposed to play the role of antagonist opposing Princess Phenia, was currently missing; and lastly, the two retainers from Roth-Taylor family, Caden and Knox, who were currently being detained by the Academy. The news of their detention was not good news for him, because he had to inform Crefin of his death, and remove his existence from his awareness. He had gone to great lengths to put on that show, but now, the situation was even more complicated. Caden and Knox were now detained by the Academy for being suspects in his murder. Ed thought that he had to find a way to release them immediately, and convince Crefin that he was really dead. After that, only then could he end this frustrating life of seclusion. There were so many things he had to do. Ed could only sigh helplessly at the thought. Janica suddenly looked gloomy and sad at this time. She said, Ed was a noble heir to a duke's family. Even after being exiled, he's caught up in all sorts of trouble. Ed was then confused to hear her suddenly say such a thing. Janica continued, I'm just a commoner from a rural farmhouse, so I don't really understand what Ed's life feels like. That's why I can't even comfort Ed properly, saying things like it's no big deal or cheer up, as if I know everything. Those kinds of words are meaningless, and they don't feel genuine anyway. Janica really felt sad about it. Hearing that, Ed then asked her not to think too much about it. What she did was more than enough for him, even though Ed said so. But Janica was not satisfied. She wanted to help him solve his problem. This was just her selfish desire. While smiling sweetly at him, Janica said that she just didn't want him to suffer anymore. Ed suddenly blushed when he saw her smile, and the atmosphere suddenly became awkward. Lately, every time he was alone with Janica, sometimes there was always a moment of awkward silence like this. Not that he felt uncomfortable or anything, but he couldn't find a reason for this strange feeling between them. Ed then tried to calm himself down. He said that he was very grateful. No one cared about him this much. Janica was surprised for a moment to hear that. While laughing awkwardly, she said that hearing it was really embarrassing. The point is, Janica said that their priority now is to find Tanya. They don't know where she is and what she is doing. She also feels that he seems to be worried about her. Hearing that, Ed then thought for a moment. He said that he already had a premonition about it. At first, he was surprised by Tanya, who was different from his memories. In The Failed Swordsman of Sylvania, Tanya Roth-Taylor was a strong, noble, and fearless person. He had seen Tanya's firm nature with his own eyes. Based on that, Ed was sure that Tanya would be able to overcome her situation. Even now, he was sure that she was coping with her problems and planning for the future, as she always did, with her dignified and graceful demeanor. Ed smiled slightly at the thought, but, contrary to his guess, Tanya was now seen in a luxurious room while trembling with fear. It was Princess Fenia's room. While looking at her, Tanya swore that she never ordered anyone to kill her brother. Fenia was silent for a moment, hearing that, before Tanya appeared, she received the news of Ed Rothtailor's death. When it happened, he cancelled almost all pending appointments and expedited the completion of several tasks. She really wanted to resolve the complicated relationship between the two of them. She wanted to find a moment to chat with him properly, but, with just 1 day remaining, he died. If only she was 1 day earlier, this definitely wouldn't have happened. Her petty pride always prevented her from acting in time. Fenia was really annoyed with herself. Right when she just entered this academy, she had already collected data and continued to mature to achieve her goal, which was to become the student council president of Sylvania Academy. Compared to the power possessed by the imperial family, this was just a small achievement, but within Sylvania Academy, this would make her have a great influence. She didn't want to continue to be the third princess who always relied on the power of the imperial family. She aimed to establish an independent position as student council president of Sylvania Academy, not as someone supported by the imperial family, but by relying on her own power, to confront the darkness of the Roth-Taylor family and the imperial family. But, the more she thought about it further, the more she realized that she was someone who should not hold power. Fenia could only cry sadly thinking about it. At that moment, someone suddenly entered her room and respectfully called her. He asked her if he could ask for a moment of her time. Fenia realized that it was Claire's voice, and when she looked back, she then saw Claire as well as someone with a messy appearance. Seeing that person, Fenia then realized that it was Tanya, although the full details had not been confirmed. Based on the Academy's preliminary investigation, it is likely that Ed has been killed by retainers from the Roth-Taylor family. Excluding the exiled Ed, the only remaining heir of the Roth-Taylor family on the Arkan Island is. Realizing her gaze, Tanya then said fearfully, "The princess must not believe it either, but I swear it wasn't me. I never harmed my brother." But, as Tanya tried hard to convince Fenia, she was then surprised, when Fenia suddenly hugged her. Fenia was sure that Tanya must have gone through a lot of difficult things. She then told her to go inside and tell her everything that had happened until now. Fenia realized that she had to learn from mistakes, not to misjudge just because someone bears the name Roth-Taylor. That's roughly the story of why Tanya could be in Fenia's room. Seeing Tanya, who was crying and her body shaking violently, Fenia then walked over to her, and told her that she decided to take her word for it, so, until the situation was clearer, she would hide her in the royal dormitory. Her words seemed to have calmed Tanya down. Tanya then thanked her. She was very grateful. She said that she owed her a favor. Fenia smiled softly at that. She said no, this was indeed something she should do. She assured her, for now, she would be safe here. After her interaction with Tanya, Fenia felt that she was really a fragile girl. She couldn't understand that she would even consider getting involved in a political plan against a girl like her. At this moment, someone suddenly entered her room, and reported to her that there was a guest waiting in the reception room. Fenia understood. She then told the person to process the next schedule. With a serious expression, Fenia then stood up and walked towards the reception room. She was now aware that the real opponent lies elsewhere. Seeing the person, Fenia then asked how she was. She replied, "Ed's death is indeed regrettable, but we must continue to conduct the Academy's affairs in our own way." She then asked her opinion regarding that. Hearing that, Fenia did not mince words anymore. She then asked her, "So, what is the matter with you looking for me?" She smiled slightly at that. Amidst the chaos that engulfed the Academy's political scene, the only person who fully understood the bigger picture was none other than Lortel Ketchum. Lortel then said that she was here to ask why she was hiding Tanya. In this academy, there seemed to be no secrets that could be hidden from her.